"What is this thing between your legs?" The question hung in the air, shocking Eric Howard into stunned silence. He stared at the alien researcher, Fornax, whose large, curious eyes fixed unblinkingly on his exposed genitalia. Eric had never imagined his first contact with an alien species would involve such an intimate inquiry. Just days ago, he'd been piloting his spacecraft on a routine exploratory mission. Now he lay on an examination table on a distant world, surrounded by beings who'd never seen a human before. The crash landing on the Daxamite planet had been violent and disorienting. Eric's ship, a cutting-edge vessel designed for deep space exploration, now lay in twisted ruins on the outskirts of a gleaming alien metropolis. He'd barely managed to drag himself from the wreckage before losing consciousness. When he awoke, Eric found himself in a sterile white room that hummed with advanced technology. The Daxamites, a species with no discernible sexual characteristics, had been fascinated by his anatomy from the moment they discovered him. Their own reproduction involved a complex process of genetic recombination, making Eric's biology seem primitive yet intriguing to them. Fornax, a young and eager Daxamite researcher, had been assigned to study Eric. The alien's slender androgynous form moved with fluid grace as it conducted various tests and scans. Eric had tried to communicate, to explain that he was an explorer from Earth, but the language barrier proved challenging. As the medical examination progressed, Eric became increasingly aware of the Daxamites' intense interest in his reproductive organs. Their probing questions and invasive scans made him uncomfortable, but he reminded himself that he was a representative of humanity. He needed to maintain composure and foster positive relations with this advanced species. However, Eric's diplomatic resolve wavered when he overheard a conversation between two senior Daxamite officials outside his room. Though he couldn't understand their language, the translation device they'd given him picked up fragments that chilled him to the core. Breeding program, genetic diversity, primary subject. Panic set in as Eric realized the implications. The Daxamites saw him not as an equal or an ambassador, but as a specimen, a source of genetic material that could potentially revolutionize their own biology. He was trapped on an alien world, cut off from Earth, facing the possibility of forced participation in reproductive experiments. Meanwhile, back on Earth, Mission Control had lost contact with Eric's ship. Fearing the worst, they assumed he'd been captured by hostile aliens. Plans for a rescue mission were already underway, but they had no idea of the true nature of Eric's predicament. As Eric lay on the examination table, his mind raced. He needed to find a way to communicate the complexity of human rights and ethics to the Daxamites. He had to make them understand that experimenting on him without consent violated interspecies laws that, admittedly, didn't yet exist between their civilizations. The situation was further complicated by Eric's growing awareness of the Daxamites' technological capabilities. Their advancements in genetics, energy production, and space travel far surpassed humanity's. If he could somehow negotiate a peaceful exchange of knowledge, it could catapult human civilization forward by centuries. But first, Eric had to navigate the immediate crisis. As Fornax continued the examination, occasionally prodding him with unfamiliar instruments, Eric realized he needed allies. Surely not all Daxamites would agree with this unethical treatment of a sentient being. He had to find those who might sympathize with his plight and help him either escape or contact Earth. The fate of future human-Daxamite relations now rested on Eric's shoulders. His actions and decisions in the coming days would shape the course of interstellar diplomacy and scientific collaboration. As he met Fornax's inquisitive gaze, Eric steeled himself for the challenges ahead. He was no longer just an astronaut, he had become humanity's unwitting ambassador to the stars. Eric took a deep breath, steeling himself against the alien researcher's probing gaze. He realized that his next words could shape the future of human-Daxamite relations. With careful deliberation, he spoke. "Fornax, I understand your curiosity about human anatomy, but there's so much more we could learn from each other if we approach this as equals." The alien's large eyes blinked rapidly, processing Eric's words through the translation device. Fornax cocked its head, a gesture Eric had come to recognize as interest. "What do you propose, Eric Howard?" Eric sat up slowly on the examination table, wincing at the soreness from his crash landing. I'm willing to participate in non-invasive studies of human physiology. In return, I'd like more freedom to move around and learn about your technology. Fornax's slender fingers tapped against its datapad, considering the offer. After a moment, it nodded. Your proposal has merit. I will advocate for this arrangement with the Council. Over the next few days, Eric found himself at the center of intense debate among the Daxamite leadership. He caught snippets of their discussions through his translation device, hearing phrases like mutual scientific exchange and reproductive goals tossed back and forth. Finally, a decision was reached. The head of the Daxamite Council, a tall being named Vex, approached Eric's quarters. We accept your terms, Eric Howard, with one condition, Vex stated, its voice a low hum. You must provide genetic samples for our breeding program. Eric's stomach churned at the request, but he recognized the delicate balance he needed to maintain. I'll agree, but only if the samples are used ethically and with my ongoing consent. Vex's features remained impassive, but it inclined its head slightly. Acceptable. As Eric began working closely with Fornax and the Daxamite scientists, he found himself alternately fascinated and unnerved by their studies. They conducted various experiments, focusing intently on human reproductive systems. During one session, Eric watched in amazement as Fornax demonstrated the Daxamite method of reproduction. The alien's body began to glow with a soft, pulsating light. Our reproduction involves energy transfer and genetic recombination, Fornax explained, its voice tinged with pride. We have no biological sex differentiation as you do. Eric's mind reeled at the implications. That's incredible. The potential applications for energy manipulation alone are staggering. As promised, Eric was granted more freedom to explore the Daxamite city. He marveled at the gleaming spires and humming energy conduits that crisscrossed the metropolis. In one laboratory, he witnessed Daxamite scientists harnessing fusion power on a scale that made Earth's efforts seem primitive. Our energy production could revolutionize your world, a Daxamite researcher named Lear told him. And our medical treatments, they could eradicate many of the diseases that plague your species. Eric's excitement at these discoveries was tempered by a growing unease. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking a tightrope between two worlds, with the fate of future relations hanging in the balance. His fears were realized when Fornax burst into his quarters one evening, its usually calm demeanor shattered. Eric, we have a problem, Fornax said, its voice low and urgent. There's a faction within our government, led by a politician named Zorn. They're pushing for more aggressive methods to extract human genetic material. Eric felt a chill run down his spine. What do you mean by aggressive methods? Fornax's eyes darted nervously. Invasive procedures, possibly without your consent. Zorn argues that the potential threat from your approaching rescue mission justifies extreme measures. Eric's mind raced. He had almost forgotten about the rescue mission from Earth. We need to contact my people before they arrive. If they think I'm being held captive, it could lead to a violent confrontation. Fornax nodded, its slender form tense with worry. I've been working on modifying one of our long-range communication devices. If we can boost its power, we might be able to reach your ship. Over the next few days, Eric and Fornax worked feverishly on the communication device. They repurposed parts from various Daxamite technologies, pushing the limits of Eric's engineering knowledge and Fornax's understanding of their own systems. As they worked, the political situation on the planet deteriorated rapidly. Eric overheard heated arguments in the corridors, with Zorn's name mentioned frequently. The moderate Daxamite leaders who had supported Eric's compromise were facing increasing pressure. Just as Eric and Fornax were making a breakthrough with their communication device, alarms blared throughout the complex. Fornax's eyes widened in shock. It's Zorn, the alien said, its voice trembling. He staged a coup. The moderate leaders have been arrested. Eric's heart pounded as he realized the gravity of the situation. We need to finish this now. It's our only chance to prevent a disaster. As they frantically made the final adjustments to the device, they heard heavy footsteps approaching their location. Zorn's supporters were closing in. Eric's fingers flew over the alien controls, guided by Fornax's instructions. The device hummed to life, emitting a soft blue glow. As Eric input the coordinates for the Earth rescue mission, he silently prayed that Commander Sarah Bennett would receive their message in time. The door to their makeshift lab burst open, revealing a group of stern-faced Daxamites led by an imposing figure Eric assumed was Zorn. The alien leader's eyes narrowed as he took in the scene. "Step away from that device," Zorn commanded, his voice cold and authoritative. Eric's hand hovered over the transmission button, his gaze locked with Fornax's. In that moment, he knew that his next action would determine not just his fate, but potentially the future of human-Daxamite relations. His finger hovered over the transmission button for a split second before he pressed it decisively. A soft hum filled the air as the device came to life, sending out a powerful signal into the depths of space. Eric's heart raced, hoping against hope that Commander Sarah Bennett would receive the message in time. "Step away from that device!" Zorn's voice boomed through the room, cold and authoritative. Eric exchanged a quick glance with Fornax, both understanding the gravity of their situation. Without hesitation, Fornax grabbed Eric's arm and pulled him towards a hidden panel in the wall. "This way!" Fornax hissed, activating a mechanism that revealed a narrow passageway. They ducked into the opening just as Zorn's troops flooded the room. The panel slid shut behind them, plunging them into darkness. Eric could hear the muffled shouts and the sound of equipment being overturned as Zorn's forces searched for them. "We need to keep moving," Fornax whispered, guiding Eric through the maze-like tunnels. They navigated the underground network, their footsteps echoing softly off the metallic walls. Eric's mind whirled with the implications of what had just transpired. He had managed to send the message, but would it be enough? And what would happen to them now? After what felt like hours of twisting and turning through the labyrinth, they emerged in a remote area of the Daxamite city. The alien metropolis stretched out before them, its towering spires gleaming in the light of the planet's twin moons. "We can't stay in the open," Eric said, scanning their surroundings. "Zorn will have the entire city searching for us." Fornax nodded, its large eyes reflecting the city lights. "I know a place, an abandoned research facility not far from here. It should provide temporary shelter." As they made their way through the deserted outskirts of the city, Eric's thoughts turned to the Earth rescue mission. He pictured Commander Bennett's face as she received his message, imagining the mix of relief and concern that would cross her features. Aboard the rescue ship, Commander Sarah Bennett leaned forward in her chair, her eyes fixed on the communications display. A sudden burst of static filled the bridge, followed by a fragmented message. "Eric Howard, Daxamite planet, political upheaval, need diplomatic approach." Bennett's eyes widened as she processed the information. "It's from Eric," she announced to her crew. "He's alive, but the situation is more complex than we thought." As the full message came through, Bennett realized that their original rescue plan would need to be completely overhauled. A military intervention could spark an interstellar conflict with catastrophic consequences. "Stand down from combat readiness," she ordered. "We need to reassess our approach. This is now a diplomatic mission." Back on the Daxamite planet, Eric and Fornax reached the abandoned research facility. The building's exterior was overgrown with strange, bioluminescent vegetation that pulsed with an eerie blue light. "It's not much, but it should keep us hidden for now," Fornax said, leading Eric inside. The interior was a maze of dusty laboratories and deactivated equipment. Eric's scientific curiosity was piqued despite their dire circumstances. He ran his hand over a console covered in alien symbols, wondering about the discoveries that had been made here. Their moment of respite was short-lived. The facility's ancient communication system crackled to life, broadcasting a citywide announcement in Zorn's stern voice. "Attention all citizens. The human known as Eric Howard is to be apprehended immediately. He is a valuable genetic resource essential to the future of our species. Any information leading to his capture will be generously rewarded." Eric's blood ran cold as he listened to Zorn's words. He was no longer just a curiosity or a diplomatic problem. He had become a hunted man. "We can't stay here long," Fornax said, its voice tinged with worry. "Zorn's forces will be conducting thorough searches. We need to find allies." As if in answer to Fornax's words, a panel in the far wall slid open, revealing a group of Daxamites. Eric tensed, ready to run, but Fornax held up a hand. "Wait," it said. "I recognize one of them. That's Lyra, a respected scientist. She's known for her moderate views." The Daxamite at the front of the group stepped forward. Lyra was tall and willowy, with a grace that reminded Eric of a dancer. Her large, expressive eyes studied him with open curiosity. "We've been monitoring the communications channels," Lyra said, her voice soft but firm. "We oppose Zorn's extremist policies and want to help you." Eric glanced at Fornax, who nodded encouragingly. "What did you have in mind?" he asked Lyra. "We have a network of safe locations throughout the city," Lyra explained. "But more importantly, I've been working on an alternative method of genetic exchange, one that doesn't require invasive procedures or forced participation." Eric's scientific interest was immediately piqued. "How does it work?" Lyra's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. "It involves advanced nanotechnology, combining human and Daxamite genetic material at a molecular level. If successful, it could allow for the creation of hybrid offspring without traditional reproductive methods." The implications of such technology were staggering. Eric's mind raced with the possibilities. If we could perfect this process, it might satisfy the Daxamite's desire for genetic diversity without violating anyone's rights. Lyra nodded. "Exactly. But we need your help to complete the research. Your unique perspective as a human could be invaluable." Eric looked around at the group of resistance members, then back at Fornax. He thought of the Earth rescue mission approaching, of Zorn's forces searching the city, of the delicate balance between two civilizations that hung in the balance. He took a deep breath and made his decision. "I'm in," he said. "Let's get to work." As Eric and Lyra began to discuss the intricacies of their genetic research, Fornax kept watch at the facility's entrance. Outside, the city hummed with tension, Zorn's patrols combing every street and alley. The race against time had begun, with the fate of two worlds hanging on the outcome of their clandestine experiment. The soft hum of their makeshift equipment filled the air as Eric and Lyra worked side by side, their fingers dancing over alien controls with practiced ease. Suddenly, Fornax's voice cut through the focused silence. "We need to move. Now." Eric looked up, his heart rate quickening at the urgency in Fornax's tone. "What's happening?" "Zorn's forces," Fornax replied, its large eyes darting nervously. "They've found our location. We have minutes at most." Lyra sprang into action, her slender form moving with fluid grace as she began packing essential equipment. "We can't let them get their hands on our research," she said, her voice tight with tension. Eric nodded, quickly assisting her in gathering their vital materials. He carefully secured the container holding their breakthrough hybrid embryo, knowing its importance to their work and potentially to the future of both species. "We'll need to split up," Fornax announced, its gaze fixed on a holographic display of the city. "It's our best chance of evading capture." Eric exchanged a quick glance with Lyra, seeing his own mix of fear and dedication reflected in her eyes. "Agreed," he said. "Lyra and I will take the research materials. Fornax, can you lead the others as a decoy?" Fornax nodded solemnly. "I know these streets better than Zorn's troops. I'll keep them busy." As they finalized their plan, the distant sound of heavy footsteps and shouted orders reached their ears. Time was running out. "The rendezvous point is an underground facility on the city's outskirts," Fornax explained hurriedly. "It's well hidden and should buy us some time." With a final nod to each other, the group split. Eric and Lyra slipped out through a hidden exit, while Fornax led the other resistance members in the opposite direction. The Daxamite night engulfed Eric and Lyra as they emerged onto the streets. The city's towering spires loomed above them, their surfaces reflecting the eerie glow of the twin moons. They moved swiftly and silently, ducking into shadows and weaving through a maze of abandoned industrial complexes. As they navigated the urban landscape, Eric marveled at Lyra's expertise. She effortlessly disabled security systems and bypassed locked gates, her knowledge of Daxamite technology proving invaluable. "There," Lyra whispered, pointing to a massive structure ahead. That's the old mineral processing plant. If we can get through it, we'll be close to the outskirts. They approached the building cautiously, eyes scanning for any sign of Zorn's patrols. As they slipped inside, Eric's gaze was drawn to the imposing machinery that filled the cavernous space. Hulking metal constructs, their purpose a mystery to him, stood silent and still in the darkness. Lyra led them through the plant, her steps sure and confident. As they passed a row of windows, Eric caught glimpses of the city beyond. His eyes widened as he saw groups of Daxamites gathered in the streets, their voices raised in what appeared to be protest. "Lyra, look," he said, gesturing to the scene outside. She paused, her expression a mix of surprise and hope. It seems Zorn's actions have not gone unnoticed by the general population. This unrest could work in our favor. As they continued their journey, Eric's mind raced with possibilities. If enough Daxamites opposed Zorn's aggressive policies, perhaps a peaceful resolution was still possible. Their progress through the city was slow but steady, each step bringing them closer to their destination. However, as they approached the rendezvous point, an uneasy feeling settled in Eric's stomach. "Something's not right," he murmured as they neared the hidden entrance to the underground facility. Lyra nodded, her body tense. "I sense it too. We should proceed with caution." They crept forward, every sense on high alert. As they reached the concealed door, Eric's fears were confirmed. The entrance had been forced open, signs of a struggle evident in the twisted metal and scattered debris. "It's been compromised," Lyra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can't stay here." Eric's mind raced, searching for alternatives. "The cave systems," he said suddenly. "You mentioned they interfere with Daxamite scanning technology. Could we set up there?" Lyra's eyes lit up. "Brilliant idea. There's an entrance not far from here. Follow me." They set off again, their pace quickening as the sound of distant shouts reached their ears. The cave entrance, hidden behind an outcropping of strange, crystalline rock formations, provided a welcome refuge from the tense city streets. Inside, the air was cool and damp, filled with the soft echoes of unseen water droplets. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, casting an ethereal blue glow throughout the cavern. "This should do," Lyra said, surveying their surroundings. "Let's set up our equipment here." They worked quickly, transforming a section of the cave into a makeshift laboratory. Eric carefully removed the hybrid embryo from its protective case, placing it in a nutrient bath they had improvised from their limited supplies. As they began to document their findings, Eric couldn't help but marvel at the situation. Here he was, deep in an alien cave system, working alongside a Daxamite scientist on research that could change the course of two civilizations. He glanced at Lyra, admiring her focus and dedication as she meticulously recorded data. A strange warmth filled his chest, a feeling that went beyond mere scientific collaboration. He pushed the thought aside, forcing himself to concentrate on the task at hand. Hours passed as they worked, the outside world fading away in the face of their shared purpose. The hybrid embryo, floating serenely in its makeshift incubator, seemed to pulse with potential. Suddenly, a familiar crackle broke the silence. Eric's eyes widened as he recognized the sound of the modified long-range communication device he had built with Fornax. "Eric, can you hear me?" Commander Bennett's voice, distorted but unmistakable, filled the cave. Eric scrambled to adjust the device, his heart pounding with a mix of relief and anxiety. "Commander Bennett, yes, I can hear you. We've got so much to tell you." As Eric began to brief Bennett on the complex situation unfolding on the Daxamite planet, Lyra continued her work, her gaze flickering between the embryo and the human who had become far more than just a scientific curiosity. Outside the cave, the city seethed with unrest, the future of human-Daxamite relations hanging in the balance. Balance. The cave fell silent as Eric finished his report to Commander Bennett, the gravity of their situation settling over them like a heavy blanket. Lyra's voice broke through the tension. "Eric, we need to move. This cave has served its purpose, but we can't stay hidden forever." Eric nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "You're right, but where do we go from here?" As if in answer to his question, a familiar figure appeared at the cave's entrance. Fornax's large eyes gleamed in the dim light as it stepped inside, followed by a taller, more imposing Daxamite. "Eric, Lyra," Fornax said, its voice tinged with urgency. "This is Vex, one of the escaped Daxamite elders. He has crucial information that could turn the tide in our favor." Vex stepped forward, his aged features etched with persistence. "I've been monitoring Zorn's activities from the shadows. The time has come to strike at the heart of his power, the central communication hub." Eric's eyebrows shot up. "The hub? That's got to be one of the most heavily guarded facilities on the planet." Vex nodded gravely. "Indeed it is, but I have something that might level the playing field." He produced a small data crystal, its surface glowing faintly in the cave's dim light. "Detailed schematics of the hub and access codes. With these, we have a chance of success." Lyra's eyes widened as she examined the crystal. "This is incredible. How did you obtain this?" "I have my ways," Vex said, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "The question now is, what will you do with it?" Eric and Lyra exchanged a look, years of scientific training and shared experiences passing between them in an instant. "We'll use it," Eric said firmly. "If we can broadcast our research findings from the hub, we might be able to turn public opinion against Zorn and end this conflict before it escalates further." The group huddled together, poring over the schematics and formulating a plan. As the details came together, a sense of nervous excitement filled the air. "We'll need to split our forces," Fornax said, pointing to different sections of the hub's layout. "I can lead a diversionary attack here, drawing away Zorn's security teams." Vex nodded approvingly. That should give Eric and Lyra the opening they need to reach the main control room. As the others continued to discuss strategy, Eric carefully packed up their research materials, including the containment unit housing the hybrid embryo. He couldn't help but notice how much it had developed in just the short time since they'd created it. The implications of their work were staggering, and he felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. Hours later, under the cover of Daxamite night, the team put their plan into motion. Eric and Lyra moved silently through the city streets, their hearts pounding with each step that brought them closer to the imposing structure of the communication hub. As they approached the first security checkpoint, Lyra input Vex's access code. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then with a soft hiss, the barrier slid open. "It worked," Eric whispered, relief flooding through him. They pressed on, navigating through a maze of corridors and security measures. Each time they encountered a locked door or scanning device, Vex's codes proved their worth, allowing them to slip through undetected. As they moved deeper into the facility, Eric caught glimpses of the hub's inner workings. Massive banks of computers hummed with activity, their screens displaying a dizzying array of data streams and communication channels. In one room, they passed a group of Daxamite citizens being herded by armed guards, their faces etched with fear and confusion. "Zorn's volunteers," Lyra murmured, her voice tight with anger, "forced to participate in his genetic experiments." Eric felt a surge of restored dedication. What they were doing wasn't just about scientific discovery anymore. It was about saving lives and preserving freedom. As they neared the main control room, the sound of alarms blaring in a distant part of the facility reached their ears. "Fornax," Eric said, a grim smile on his face. "Right on schedule." They rounded the final corner, the entrance to the control room looming before them. Eric's heart sank as he saw a group of Daxamites in military uniforms standing guard. "Zorn's loyalists," Lyra whispered. "We'll have to fight our way through." Before Eric could respond, one of the guards spotted them. "Intruders!" he shouted, reaching for his weapon. Time seemed to slow as Eric's combat training kicked in. He launched himself at the nearest guard, using his smaller size and human agility to his advantage. His fist connected with the Daxamite's jaw, sending him stumbling backward. Out of the corner of his eye, Eric saw Lyra moving with unexpected grace and power. Her slender form flowed from one opponent to the next, her strikes precise and devastating. She was using some form of Daxamite martial art, he realized, her movements almost beautiful in their lethal efficiency. In a matter of moments, the guards lay incapacitated on the floor. Eric and Lyra exchanged a look of mutual respect and surprise at each other's combat prowess. "Remind me never to get on your bad side," Eric said with a wry grin as they entered the control room. Inside, banks of advanced Daxamite computers filled the space. Eric's fingers flew over the alien controls, his mind racing to apply his knowledge of human systems to this foreign technology. "We're in," he announced as the main screen flickered to life. "But we've got company." Red warning lights flashed across the display as Zorn's cybersecurity team attempted to block their transmission. Eric gritted his teeth, pushing his skills to the limit as he fought to stay ahead of their countermeasures. "Lyra, I need you to modulate the signal frequency," he called out. "Use the tertiary broadcasting array." Working in perfect sync, they managed to stay one step ahead of Zorn's team. Slowly but surely, their research findings began to stream out across the Daxamite communication networks. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the room. The containment unit housing the hybrid embryo toppled from its perch, nearly crashing to the floor before Lyra caught it. "Eric, look!" she exclaimed, her eyes wide with amazement. The embryo was pulsing with an intense, otherworldly light. Its rate of development, already accelerated, seemed to have increased exponentially. "The transmission equipment," Eric realized. "The energy output must be affecting its growth somehow." As they watched in awe, the embryo continued to change and evolve at an alarming rate. Eric's scientific mind raced with the implications, even as another part of him worried about the potential consequences of this unforeseen development. A thunderous boom echoed through the facility, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps approaching rapidly. "Zorn," Lyra said, her voice tight with tension. "He's coming for us." Eric looked from the embryo to the transmission controls, his mind working furiously. They were so close to completing the broadcast, but the embryo's stability was deteriorating rapidly. In that moment, Eric made a decision that would change everything. He reached for a nearby medical scanner, quickly analyzing his own genetic structure. With a deep breath, he interfaced with the embryo's containment unit, initiating a transfer of his own genetic material. "Eric, what are you doing?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with concern. "Stabilizing the embryo," he replied, wincing as he felt the connection form between himself and the rapidly developing life form. "It's the only way to ensure its survival." As the transfer completed, Eric felt a profound shift within himself. He knew with absolute certainty that he had just formed an unbreakable biological link with the hybrid embryo. The implications for his future and his potential return to Earth were staggering. The door to the control room shuddered under a heavy impact. Zorn's forces were moments away from breaking through. The broadcast was nearly complete, but not quite finished. Eric and Lyra locked eyes, the weight of their next decision hanging heavily between them. Stay and defend their position to ensure the full transmission of their research, or attempt a daring escape with the now stabilized embryo. The door began to buckle, the sound of metal straining filling the air. Time was running out. Whatever they decided, the consequences would shape the future of human Daxamite relations for generations to come. Eric's hand hovered over the control panel, Lyra's eyes fixed on the embryo. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance as they prepared to make their choice. Eric's hand hovered over the control panel for a split second before decisively pressing down. "We stay," he said, his voice firm. "We finish this." Lyra nodded, her fingers flying over the alien keyboard as she worked to complete the broadcast. The door buckled inward with a screech of protesting metal, and Eric braced himself for the onslaught. As Zorn's forces poured into the room, Eric's combat training kicked in. He moved with fluid precision, ducking under a wild swing from the first attacker and delivering a sharp uppercut that sent the Daxamite stumbling backward. His human agility gave him an edge in the cramped space, allowing him to weave between the larger Daxamites. Behind him, Lyra's voice rang out. "Almost there! Just need to bypass their final firewall." Eric caught a glimpse of her working furiously at the console, her face a mask of concentration. He redoubled his efforts, knowing every second he bought her was crucial. A meaty fist grazed his cheek, and Eric tasted blood. He retaliated with a series of quick jabs to his attacker's solar plexus, grateful for the hours he'd spent studying Daxamite physiology. The alien went down with a grunt. Suddenly, a resounding crash filled the room. Eric's heart sank as he saw the containment unit housing the hybrid embryo topple to the floor, its protective casing cracking on impact. "No!" Lyra cried out, momentarily distracted from her work. Time seemed to slow as the embryo, now exposed to the room's atmosphere, began to pulse with an otherworldly light. Before their eyes, it started to grow at an astonishing rate, its form shifting and changing with dizzying speed. The fighting ground to a halt as both sides watched in stunned silence. Within minutes, the embryo had developed into a small, humanoid form. Its features were a striking blend of human and Daxamite traits, Eric's dark hair and Lyra's luminescent eyes, set in a face that held the angular beauty of the Daxamites. As the hybrid being continued to grow, now resembling a young child, its eyes flew open. A wave of psychic energy washed over the room, and Eric heard a voice in his mind, clear and strong. "Stop this violence," the child said, its mental voice echoing with wisdom beyond its apparent years. "There is another way." Before anyone could react, the door burst open once more. Fornax charged in, leading a group of resistance fighters. "Eric! Lyra! We've come to—" He stopped short, his large eyes widening at the sight of the hybrid child. Taking advantage of the momentary confusion, Lyra turned back to the console. "Broadcast complete," she announced triumphantly. The hybrid child, now appearing closer to a teenager, stepped forward. Its voice resonated in their minds once more. "Your people are listening," it said, addressing both humans and Daxamites. "They see the potential of our unity." On screens throughout the facility, they could see images of Daxamite citizens taking to the streets, their faces a mix of awe and hope as they witnessed the miraculous being and absorbed the implications of Eric and Lyra's research. Zorn, his face contorted with rage, pushed through his own stunned forces. "Abomination!" he snarled, reaching for a weapon at his belt. "You'll destroy everything we've built." Eric felt a surge of protective instinct. Without hesitation, he launched himself at Zorn, tackling the larger Daxamite to the ground. They grappled fiercely, Eric's human adaptability matched against Zorn's superior strength. As they fought, a new commotion arose outside. Commander Bennett's voice crackled over the communication system. "This is Commander Bennett of the Earthship Artemis. We come in peace and solidarity with those who seek cooperation between our peoples." The hybrid, now fully grown, raised its hands. A wave of psychic energy washed over the room, stronger than before. Eric felt his mind expanding, connecting with those around him. He experienced flashes of Lyra's willpower, Fornax's hope, Bennett's purpose, and even Zorn's fear. For a moment, all was still. Then Vex's weathered voice filled the air, broadcasting across the planet. "People of Daxam, hear me. The time has come to end this conflict and embrace a new future, one of collaboration and mutual growth with our human friends." The hybrid stepped forward, its form radiating power and grace. It demonstrated abilities that left both humans and Daxamites in awe, lifting impossible weights with ease, solving complex equations in seconds, and adapting its body to various simulated environments. Zorn, his eyes wild with desperation, broke free from Eric's grasp. He pulled out a small device, its surface glowing with an ominous light. "You think you've won," he spat. "This will unravel your precious hybrid's genetic code. Without it, your unity is nothing." Eric's mind raced, calculating the potential fallout if Zorn succeeded. He locked eyes with Lyra, a silent understanding passing between them. They had come too far to fail now. The hybrid's voice echoed in their minds once more, calm despite the looming threat. "Together," it said simply, reaching out to touch both Eric and Lyra's hands. As one, they turned to face Zorn and his weapon, the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance. Balance. In that instant, a surge of psychic energy emanated from the hybrid, connecting the minds of all present. Eric felt a flood of emotions and memories wash over him, not just his own, but those of Lyra, Zorn, and the others in the room. Through this shared consciousness, a plan crystallized. The hybrid's voice resonated in their minds. "We must act now. The weapon threatens not just me, but the future of both our species. As if awakening from a trance, Eric sprang into action. "Fornax," he called out, "gather your most trusted allies. We need to evacuate the surrounding area immediately." Fornax nodded, his earlier confusion replaced by tenacity. He quickly dispatched his team, coordinating with the resistance fighters to clear the facility. Eric turned to Lyra, their eyes meeting in silent understanding. "We need to locate that weapon," he said, his voice low and urgent. The hybrid, now fully grown and radiating an otherworldly presence, stepped forward. "I can sense its location," it said, its voice a melodious blend of Eric and Lyra's tones. "It's hidden in an underground bunker beneath the capital city." As they prepared to move out, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble. The vibrations quickly intensified, evolving into violent shaking that threatened to tear the facility apart. "Zorn's activated the planetary defense system," Lyra exclaimed, her eyes wide with alarm. Eric's mind raced, drawing on years of astronaut training. "Everyone, brace yourselves against the nearest solid structure," he shouted over the growing din. "Keep your arms tucked in and protect your head." The team followed his instructions as chunks of ceiling began to rain down around them. Eric's gaze darted around the room, assessing potential escape routes. His eyes locked onto a reinforced doorway across the chamber. "There," he pointed. "We need to make for that exit. It's our best chance of getting out of here in one piece." As they navigated the treacherous path to safety, Eric marveled at the hybrid's grace and agility. It moved with fluid precision, effortlessly dodging falling debris and helping others to safety. More than once, Eric saw it use its enhanced strength to lift massive chunks of rubble, clearing the way for the team. Once outside, they were confronted by a scene of chaos. The seismic activity had spread across the city, toppling buildings and creating fissures in the ground. The air was thick with dust and the cries of panicked Daxamites. Eric's communicator crackled to life. "Bennett to ground, team," came the commander's voice, tinged with static. "We're picking up massive seismic disturbances. What's your status?" "We're alive, but the situation's critical," Eric responded. "Zorn's activated some kind of planetary defense system. We need to evacuate as many civilians as possible." "Understood," Bennett replied. "I'm coordinating with Vex now. We're mobilizing every available ship for evacuation efforts." As they made their way through the crumbling city, Eric was struck by the sight of humans and Daxamites working side by side to rescue trapped civilians and clear debris. Despite the dire circumstances, a spark of hope ignited in his chest. This was the cooperation they had been fighting for. The hybrid suddenly stiffened, its luminous eyes narrowing. "We're being watched," it warned telepathically. "Zorn's loyalists are attempting to impede our progress." Eric felt a pressure building in his mind, an alien presence trying to assert control. But as quickly as it came, it dissipated, repelled by a protective barrier emanating from the hybrid. "I'm shielding us from their mental influence," the hybrid explained. "But we must hurry. I cannot maintain this protection indefinitely." They pressed on, winding their way through the city's labyrinthine streets. As they approached the location of the underground bunker, they encountered a series of heavily fortified security checkpoints. Lyra stepped forward, her fingers dancing over the alien control panels. "The encryption's unlike anything I've seen," she muttered, frustration evident in her voice. Eric joined her, studying the unfamiliar symbols. "Wait," he said, a flash of insight striking him. "These sequences, they're similar to the launch codes we use back on Earth. If we apply the same logic..." Together they worked in perfect synchronization, their complementary knowledge allowing them to decipher the complex security measures. One by one, the barriers fell away, granting them access to the bunker's interior. As they descended into the depths of the facility, the air grew thick with tension. The hybrid led the way, its senses alert for any sign of danger. Suddenly, it threw out an arm, halting the group's progress. "Traps," it warned, its eyes scanning the corridor ahead. "The floor is rigged with pressure sensors, and the walls conceal hidden weapon emplacements." Before anyone could react, the hybrid sprang into action. It moved with inhuman speed and grace, navigating the deadly obstacles with ease. As it reached the other side of the corridor, It interfaced with a control panel, deactivating the security measures. Impressive, Lyra breathed, a mix of awe and pride in her voice. As they pressed deeper into the bunker, a new sound reached their ears, a low, pulsing hum that seemed to vibrate through the very walls. The self-destruct sequence, Eric realized with growing dread. Zorn's initiated a countdown. The hybrid's eyes narrowed, its mind reaching out to assess the situation. "We must split up," it declared. "Fornax, take a team and locate the main reactor. You need to disable the self-destruct mechanism. The rest of us will continue towards the weapon." As Fornax's group peeled off, Eric felt the weight of their mission bearing down on him. The fate of two worlds now rested on their shoulders, and time was rapidly running out. They rounded a corner and found themselves face to face with a massive vault door. Beyond it, Eric knew, lay Zorn and the genetic destabilization device. The final confrontation was at hand, and the outcome would determine the future of human-Daxamite relations for generations to come. The hybrid stepped forward, its body beginning to glow with an otherworldly light. "I sense Zorn's presence," it said, its voice resonating with power. "He awaits us, along with the weapon that threatens our very existence." Eric exchanged a look with Lyra, both of them steeling themselves for what lay ahead. As the vault door began to open, they braced themselves for the ultimate test of their tenacity and the strength of their newfound alliance. As the vault door opened, a blinding light erupted from within, engulfing Eric, Lyra, and the hybrid. They shielded their eyes, bracing against the overwhelming force that threatened to knock them off their feet. When the light finally faded, they found themselves in a transformed chamber. The once sterile room now pulsed with an ethereal energy. At its center stood Zorn, his face a mixture of shock and awe. The genetic destabilization device lay at his feet, rendered inert by the hybrid's intervention. Eric blinked, his eyes adjusting to the soft, pulsating glow that filled the room. He turned to the hybrid, only to gasp in astonishment. The being's physical form was dissolving, its body breaking down into pure energy that shimmered and danced in the air. "What's happening?" Lyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The hybrid's voice echoed in their minds, tinged with a sense of finality. "I have neutralized the weapon, but the process has taken its toll. My corporeal form can no longer be maintained." As the hybrid's body continued to dissipate, its telepathic abilities surged. Suddenly, Eric found himself immersed in a vivid vision. He saw sprawling cities where humans and Daxamites lived side by side, working together on groundbreaking scientific projects. He witnessed the birth of children with both human and Daxamite features, their unique genetic makeup heralding a new era of evolution. The vision shifted, revealing vast fleets of starships, bearing the insignias of both Earth and Daxam, exploring the far reaches of the galaxy in harmony. Eric felt a surge of emotion as he watched diplomats from both worlds negotiating peace treaties with newly discovered alien civilizations. As abruptly as it began, the vision ended. Eric staggered, overwhelmed by the intensity of the experience. He looked around and saw that Lyra and Zorn had been similarly affected. Zorn fell to his knees, his face contorted with anguish. "What have I done?" he cried out, his voice breaking. I was wrong. So terribly wrong." Eric approached the Daxamite leader cautiously. "It's not too late, Zorn. We can still build that future together." Zorn looked up, his eyes brimming with tears. "I surrender myself to you," he said, holding out his hands. "I will face the consequences of my actions." As Lyra moved to restrain Zorn, the hybrid's voice resonated once more in their minds. "My time in this form is ending, but I have one final gift to impart." Eric and Lyra gasped as a flood of information poured into their consciousness. Complex scientific formulas, intricate details of Daxamite and human physiology, and profound insights into the nature of the universe itself filled their minds. As the torrent of knowledge subsided, Eric felt a new connection forming between himself and Lyra. Their thoughts intertwined, creating a permanent psychic link that bridged the gap between their species. The hybrid's energy began to disperse, spreading throughout the bunker. As it did, The ominous rumbling of the self-destruct sequence faded away. The hybrid's final act had stabilized the planetary defense systems, averting catastrophe. "We need to get out of here," Eric said urgently, noting the weakening structural integrity of the chamber. "This place could come down any minute." Lyra nodded, her mind already working in tandem with Eric's. "There's an emergency exit 2 levels up. If we hurry, we can make it." They raced through the crumbling corridors, with Zorn following close behind. Eric's quick reflexes and Lyra's intimate knowledge of Daxamite architecture guided them through the maze-like bunker. They dodged falling debris and leapt over widening fissures in the floor. As they reached the final stretch, a massive section of the ceiling collapsed, blocking their path. Without hesitation, Eric and Lyra combined their strength, fueled by their new psychic bond, to shift the rubble aside. They burst out of the bunker just as it imploded behind them, the ground shaking with the force of the collapse. As the dust settled, Eric turned to see a welcome sight. Commander Bennett stood nearby, coordinating with Fornax and Vex as they directed relief efforts for the affected Daxamite population. Vex's eyes widened as he saw Zorn approach, hands still outstretched in surrender. The Daxamite leader's peaceful capitulation sent ripples through the gathered crowd. Murmurs of disbelief turned to cautious hope as Vex stepped forward to address his people. "Today marks a turning point in our history," Vex announced, his voice carrying across the square. "We stand at the threshold of a new era, one of cooperation and mutual understanding with our human friends." As Vex continued his speech, outlining plans for a new inclusive government, Eric felt a surge of optimism. He turned to Lyra, their shared thoughts confirming the momentous nature of this occasion. In the days that followed, Eric and Lyra found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of diplomatic activity. Their unique bond, enhanced by the hybrid's final gift, proved invaluable in bridging cultural gaps between humans and Daxamites. Commander Bennett initiated formal talks for an alliance, focusing on scientific exchange and mutual defense. Eric watched with pride as human and Daxamite scientists eagerly shared their knowledge, each breakthrough bringing their worlds closer together. As a gesture of goodwill, the Daxamites offered to share their advanced clean energy technology. In return, humans proposed joint ventures in space exploration and resource management. The exchange marked the beginning of a technological renaissance for both civilizations. As the sun set on another day of negotiations, Eric found himself overlooking the Daxamite capital city. The skyline, once marred by conflict, now buzzed with the energy of reconstruction and growth. He felt Lyra's presence before she spoke, their psychic link humming with shared contentment. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Lyra said, joining him at the window. "I never imagined our worlds could come together like this." Eric nodded, a smile playing on his lips. "We've come so far, but there's still so much to do." As they stood there, hands intertwined, Eric's mind raced with possibilities. The hybrid's vision of the future still burned bright in his memory, a beacon guiding them towards a shared destiny among the stars.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.